There's a couple of things I thought would be really important to have you talk about, particularly this year, given what's going on. And we might come to the big one, if you like, which is the Papua LNG project and the IBBM's role in that project second. So let's first of all cover the education and training area, which is a key part of the IBBM's role. PNG's education and skills sector has traditionally struggled to fill the skills needs requirements of employers in PNG. There's always been this skills gap, hasn't there? So based on your appraisal, how big is the skills gap in PNG currently, and how does your organisation go about helping to address that gap?
Thanks, Andrew, and firstly, thanks for having me on the panel. It's a pleasure to be here. In terms of the skills gap, I think, and I think we heard a bit from the discussion from the panels this morning also, that a bit of that touched on that. It's an ongoing issue at the moment, and I think it's something that educational as well as training systems have difficulty with. I think it's because of the rapidly technology, etc., as well as the demand changing job market demand, and we heard a bit about that. You know, COVID is one of those factors in that. But I think, so I can't really comment on how big it is. We know that it's a big area and there's a gap. In terms of some of the things that IBBM is doing to address that, we've been looking at how we can do curriculum alignment. So looking at how we can speak with industry, liaise with industry, and also look at our own programs and see how we could cater for changes in the industry itself. So introducing new courses, looking at existing courses, reviewing them to see if they're up to scratch. So that's one of the things. Another area is looking at industry partnerships. So looking at where we can do internships, as well as having guest lecturers in to provide that other context in working in PNG itself. So those are some of the measures. Looking at soft skills, because it's not just the technical skills that you need, it's also soft skills, so things like problem solving, data analysis, leadership, communications. How do we also address that to make sure that Papua New Guineans also have not just the technical skills, but the skills that go with them, and it's often those skills that also lead you into other areas as well. So, so those are sort of some of the areas that I can think of off the top of my head.
So when somebody comes to study at IBM, typically they've already done some form of education, so they would have done, probably finished school. Would they have some kind of other post-school qualification as well before they come to you?
Yes. So mostly they are school leavers, because we offer bachelor's programs and MBAs. Right. But we also do professional upskilling. So we have a suite of corporate training programs that we do that's targeted to address the gap if there's already existing workers that need to address a particular skill, to upskill them on. So it's specific to that, yeah.
And in those cases, would most of those students be sponsored by an employer? Would that be the model that works?
Yes, normally it's the employer, or some actually come of their own accord as well, because they're in the job market or they want to get a job, so they need extra skills, and that's, so those are the self-sponsored ones that come through.
So roughly how many students do you have under tutelage at any particular time?
So at the moment, I would say across, when you consider our corporate training, probably just under 300, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And what about getting the teaching resources that you need to actually teach and train those students? What is the capacity for that in PNG, and how do you draw on those resources?
So that is also an area that we're working on, because a lot of our trainers too, also that we will need an accreditation process that they go through, so that they're providing quality teaching to our students. It's an ongoing area that we try to address as well. So we have trainers, but we need more trainers, and I think that's the sort of sentiment across other training institutions as well.
So what sort of skills are employers telling you that are particularly in demand at the moment, and which you're finding particular demand for in your courses? What are the hot topics?
So we heard this morning from CEO of NASFUN, so definitely in the IT technology space are some of the
Yep.
skills. We're looking at also addressing that in terms of creating new programs, because it's not just, it's a whole lot of skills around the IT area, from internet web development to database management to data analysis, for example. And it's a skill set that if we as Papua New Guinea are going to move into the 21st century, it's really important. And it's not just in the big cities, but also if you're having, you know, programs like Papua LNG in remote places, it also means that those kids in those areas or people in those areas need to also have those skills as well. So it's something that needs to be looked at. There's also, you know, with the big projects coming up, a need for HSE sort of driven skill set as well. Project management, so in that space. Construction and engineering, so all the way from diploma right up to bachelor levels programs. And I think Zani also mentioned it this morning, is with the influx from COVID and people going offshore, there's also like a whole area in the services industry that needs to be addressed as well, from teaching all the different, from diplomas right up. So there's a lot of
And I guess for those people who are suitably qualified, there are genuine employment prospects now, aren't there? There's a demand for skills and labour. That's what's driving all of this.
We've found that we've had internships and job placements where we've placed students with certain organisations or even government departments, and the take-up of those students into permanent job roles has been, you know, close to 100%. So, yeah.
So with 300 students now, what is the potential to expand in PNG? Where do you see the size of the market growing, and could that be IBBM, or do you think there are more entrants needed in the market?
I think, speaking on IBBM, there's a real potential to grow, but I think given it cannot be just POM-centric, it has to be greater than that. So I think national drive. So it means that it's not only developing institutions in Moresby, but also looking at educational institutions in your TVETs and other provinces as well. And it also helps to control the influx into everybody thinking that there's all job opportunities in Port Moresby. It's elsewhere as well in the country that's needed.
So that's a critical thing. So how important is it, and I think we're starting to move towards the second topic now, but how important are partnerships? I mean, you mentioned that some of the placements you do, but genuine partnerships with the private sector, how critical is that to the operation of IBBM?
I think it's important because it's not just the type of programs we do, but it's also getting a finger on or sort of a sense of what industry needs, because ultimately you want people to train people to go into places where there's jobs for them. So I think that industry partnership is important to get a sense of how you can develop programs that meet the need of industry, and you get a sense of that if you're interacting with them on a regular basis.
Now we might talk about the Enterprise Centre, and we might talk about a particular opportunity which is in the market right now, which a lot of people in the room might be interested in, which is the Papua LNG project. And I know you have a very specific relationship which you're running with Total Energies for that project. Perhaps you could share a little bit about what that program is, and also how people in the room might be able to get involved.
Sure, Andrew. We run an Enterprise Development Centre. So the Enterprise Development Centre is geared towards developing local businesses, Papua New Guinean businesses. And we do that through business assessments. So we assess local companies, and I think we've assessed in excess of 400 businesses to date, and also providing opportunities for them in terms of matching them to procurement opportunities. So to that end, for the Papua LNG project, we have a supplier management portal. So it's where local businesses can actually come and register on the portal, and then buyers, as in, you know, people like the Totals or the Exxons or anybody that has procurement opportunities, some of the big impact projects, they can come and register what they need, and it provides almost like a virtual marketplace of matching local suppliers to what opportunities are out there, and it gives the buyers an opportunities to have a look at what companies and what sort of skill sets and across what industries that they might need, jobs for. Yeah.
So if a company's registered on that portal, does that give them a better chance than a company that's not? Is that the idea?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, a better chance. And it's also the other aspect of that is, of course, we know under the gas agreements, there's a certain level of local participation, so it's captured under the national content section of the agreement. And it's also a way that the developer can also monitor the level of engagement under that, the local economy supply development aspect of the policy.
I think you've got records of a lot of businesses, obviously, out of the previous PNG LNG project. But I was amazed to hear how many companies have already lodged in the portal for the new project. How many are we up to now?
I think we've just gone over 300. But previous to that, on the existing database, we can say there's over 400 that we've actually assessed. So some of them have gone and registered for the Papua project, but there's also a lot more. And I think we know that from the from the developer side, they drive businesses to go and register, if they approach them to register. So that's the portal that they want to make sure that they can also monitor and capture that. But my encouragement has been that for businesses to go in and register. And it's not just local businesses, it's also foreign businesses as well. Yeah.
So give me an idea of the range of capabilities that database now represents.
So in terms of who's registered from different industries?
Well, yeah, what capabilities they have and what sort of services they can offer. Yeah.
Okay, so at the moment, Total is looking at, the project is looking at early works opportunities across the infrastructure, camp type facilities, logistics, so all those opportunities will also be available. So that's the early works. Later on, according to their need, I think they'll post other opportunities on there. Yeah.
So the potential is also that if another project operator, so you mentioned other names, not necessarily in the resources sector, but it could be an infrastructure project,
correct,
can also come to you and say, I need people to build this road, or I need people to deliver this bridge, or this waterworks, or whatever. Yeah. And there will be people in the database with that capability as well.
Correct, yes. Yeah. So our vision for the database is to be whole of economy, so just not towards the oil and gas or mining, the extractives, but broader than that, it's more about what opportunities are available in exactly what you've said, whether it's infrastructure development, PNG Connect, that sort of opportunity they can also post on the database. Yeah.
Based on what you've seen, I imagine there'll be a lot of people applying, a lot of people trying to register, and maybe requiring a bit of assistance because it's quite I would say it's quite an involved process to register. You're not just putting a name and address and a phone number, are you?
Yes.
What would your recommendations be to companies wanting to put their best foot forward or make the best possible use of that application, that opportunity?
Yeah.
What are the common mistakes or the common things that they could be doing to improve their prospects?
Yeah, I think the registration process itself takes some time. So you really have to have everything ready beforehand. What it does is when you go in, you can set up a username, set up your account, but then the back end of it means you have to set in your profile, information around that, all your company details, your IPA, TIN, etc. So that process is a bit longer. And to encourage companies that even though that process takes long, you can still go in. It might take some time, but to complete it, because I know that we monitor the stages of completion, whether to 100%, if they're 50% complete, and then give them a nudge, send them an email and say, hey, you're at this stage, So we also track that to make sure that they go on and register, but just to have patience that it might take time to do that. Yeah.
And I guess it's in your interest to make sure that everybody in that database is a genuinely useful supplier of services.
Correct, yes.
Because that's what makes employers or people who want to source contractors feel confident about the database, yes.
Yes, and that's right, and that's what I mentioned about the business assessment. So the business assessment goes back and looks at making sure that they're bona fide and that whoever the buyer is for that procurement opportunity will get the service that they've signed up to get.
Okay, so that's the message. If you own a business that supplies goods and services in Papua New Guinea, need to be on the database. How do they access it?
So we have a link that we can send out.
Okay, we'll make that available to delegates?
Yes,
yep, that's fine.
That
we'll send it out next week so that you can access that portal if you're not already on it. And likewise, if there are people with projects that want to source, they can, so they go to the same place or do they come directly to you if they want to source?
To the same place.
Okay, brilliant.